So people are really waiting. There must be some interesting conversation going on. Okay. Hey, Cassandra. So Cassandra has joined us. Wonderful. Reverend Cassandra, are you still in Canada?
Yes.
You are just loving Canada. When you watch the recording, you'll see I referenced this in the opening. I said she's in love with Canada because she thinks Vancouver is Canada. She needs to come out to Newfoundland and help me pick up the balcony furniture that's blowing around that belongs to other people in my neighborhood.
My kids are in love with Canada because of the Banff and Jasper and the whole Icefields Parkway.
Yeah.
Almost the whole experience of it. And I have family in Edmonton too.
There you go.
But all they know of is like the Icefields Parkway and hanging out with family. So
yeah.
Canada to them, they all want me to pick up, renew my Canadian citizenship, which I definitely plan to do.
Well, we get a lot of visitors, even over in this colder northern Atlantic island. We get lots of visitors. People love Canada. So what stood out for you about that conversation? We sent everyone into conversation to talk about, so I've got two computers going, so if you see me looking aside, what do we want to solve, expand, or invite in through focusing some attention by creating a strategic plan? Something that stood out to you, Reverend Jeffrey? Maybe something, did something to solve, expand, or invite mostly stand out to you? Which one?
For me, it was solve. Now we're looking at something that I never thought we were going to be, or I didn't think we were going to be looking at. You know, that low-hanging fruit is security and safety procedures. You know, policies around security and safety.
It's interesting that
the community is safe. So
yeah, sometimes it takes an incident or a situation to occur for us to put procedures into place. It's very, very common, right? And then they get into place really fast. Maybe consensus goes out the window. Who knows, right?
I'm not looking for consensus at this point. That we're not going to like all be lovey-dovey about this. It's like this is stuff that has to happen. It's not. We don't have time for consensus, you know. And I think consensus is a great thing when you've got people who are able to all be operating at a similar values level. But if you don't have everybody operating at a similar values level, I think consensus can sometimes be an impediment to progression. So I think consensus is great if you've got everybody on a similar wavelength. Consensus isn't so great if, you know, people just don't have the capacity at this point to understand on a more complex level. So yeah, so I'm not looking for consensus at this point. Nope. Consensus is for like fun stuff, like, you know, what type of cookies do we have? Yeah, it's like, no, we're not having consensus.
Ship first, improve later.
Exactly.
That was ship, right, Alan?
Yes, ship.
Okay.
Could be ship first too, you know.
Came out a little different across the airwaves. So, Alan, which one for you and your group? Solve, expand, invite.
It was absolutely expand.
Okay.
We are tiny. We have, you know, 10 to 15, 20 if we're lucky on a weekly basis, and we're in a, you know, as Reverend Laura put it, we're in a rent-a-box kind of place where we only have access to it for a few hours on Sunday morning. So that also is a big constraint for us in terms of what we can offer as a center. So we're looking for a place that we can have access to, you know, beyond just Sunday mornings. One, and two, we're also, and this is something that Teresa and I are pushing, and that's why we're on this, taking this program, is to come up with, you know, mechanisms and structures to have our outreach be more consistent and to grow. And part of that obviously is being able to offer classes and workshops and meditation sessions that we can have in the facility. So expand is definitely
wonderful. Okay. And you referenced Reverend Laura. So Reverend Laura, how about we hear from you? Oh, you're on mute. Let's unmute you.
Okay. So mine was definitely solve. Again, systems, no systems in place, so I've got to be able to create those and solve some of the issues there. And I'm kind of with Reverend Jeffrey, this can't be a consensus thing. You know, this has to, you know, this, yeah. So
yeah,
just certain things.
Did your request for a strategic planning session come while you were in your breakout session?
No, it came before when you said that earlier. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I need that.
You went into your breakout session and I got a ping on my phone. I thought,
Yeah, no, that came
breakout
before the
session.
breakout. As soon as you said, I thought people would take me up on strategic planning sessions. And I'm like, oh shoot, that's right. I need to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It definitely gives you something to point to when you're making decisions later, and whether that's around like the safety piece, once the safety, what you need gets built, and then later, to go back and make it a little more expansive. And then for Ellen, for those different categories of offerings that you want to build, if they're all under a category of education or spiritual tools or outreach, then you have a place to kind of go back to, and the strategic plan allows that and gives almost like a compass that a group continue to go back to, and it maybe stops a little of the time it takes to go through consensus or any infighting or prioritization. You can just go back to that as like the center of what you decided way back when. Let's hear from Stephanie.
We actually had a strategic planning meeting at the center at the end of October, and I was telling Reverend Jeffrey, we set out 3 goals for 2019, and one of them was so awesome, neither I nor the senior minister could remember it today. But at the top of the list was financial stability, and the way Reverend Cece would like to do that, and that's a solve. It's also an invite, into sort of buying in literally into the community a little more. She would like to solve that financial stability issue that we have by getting at least 80% of our givers giving electronically. And so so my job in that is to make sure she follows through, because it's not uncommon for things to maybe happen for about 3 months and then they kind of fall off. And she's doing a lot of things. She's running a teaching center, she's running a ministerial cohort, and she's also now working for home office. So she's got a lot happening, and I just want to keep her on track with that because she really wants to meet that goal, and I would like to see it succeed.
Wonderful.
About that, Stephanie, I was just curious, what are you using Givelify by any chance?
Please?
There's an app that we use at our center called Givelify.
Givelify.
Yes, a lot of religious institutions use it for electronic giving. And when we pass the basket, we also say, by the way, there's an app. And at this point, a lot of people use the app.
No, primarily what we're using, part of the way we keep track of our database of members and things like that is through Breeze. Mm-hmm. Breeze has text to give. We also use Vanco. We've only got one person that really uses PayPal regularly. We have a handful of ways in which people can give electronically, but I'll certainly look into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Breeze is the most common I've heard of. Other people using Breeze? Okay. Can you give it to us again? Givelify?
Givelify, yeah.
Givelify. And what is the advantage of that? Is there a different pricing model in it?
I really don't know. They were using it when I started going to the center. Mm-hmm. I've heard of it before, but it appears that a lot of religious institutions do use it. One of the things that I've noticed is when I first used it, it showed me a map and allowed me to choose which place, if I wanted to, that I was donating to. And once I actually entered my data, it saved it so that I could, next time I was at service, I would just pull up a link and say, I want to donate X amounts, and it gives me categories and sends me a receipt afterwards.
Wonderful. And remember, Laura just put up Tithe, LOI, Tithely.
Gary Simmons was just talking about that on his blog that I was reading today.
Okay.
Haven't used it, but
Givelify.
That's what it's called.
Okay, great. Lasia, are you in a spot to comment on your area? If you're doing strategic planning, would your group want to be expanding or solving or inviting something new in?
It's interesting because I think if I think of myself, then I think expanding is definitely what's going on for me. For the 2 communities that I have toes in, I think they still don't have a clear, neither community has a clear vision. They want to grow, but they really like the way things are. And I think right now, because Unity just hired a new spiritual leader after not having one for almost 10 months, things are changing very quickly all of a sudden, and there's direction that hasn't been there. And so the new spiritual leader, she has vision, and she's providing some of that direction, even though the community definitely wants to be involved. So I think it's kind of a combination of all three right now. But one is definitely going to come to the surface very, very quickly, at least for Unity.
Okay. Cassandra, do you want to weigh in on this? If you were to focus on strategic planning, perhaps for your organization that you're thinking to be with?
Well, I'm really focusing on building my own platform right now online. And so inviting something new, I would say more inviting to connect. And also with an eye on how to build a structure to an organization that is financially sustainable. So that is inviting something new, with a value in in-person connection, while still using technology to build a platform that will lead into an in-person connection that will also expand into an organization with a structure that supports itself, that might not necessarily look like a traditional church model.
Okay.
I might have touched on all three of those things.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we can clearly hear where you are. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to hop back into our slide share here for a couple of moments, and we'll come back out for a discussion. So here we are. So toes and cows. I had us do the toes, the threats and the opportunities, and then turning the weaknesses into strengths. And I got some feedback that the word threats was really not palatable in a spiritual organization, that we didn't want to believe in threats, we didn't want to believe in lack. So, I have all kinds of thoughts on that coming from the business world, but I thought, okay, what if we just called it considerations then? If it's not threats that are out there, these are things we need to consider outside of our center that could impact our center. So I would turn the T into a C, and then we have cows. So we've got cows to consider. So you might remember this grid, this quadrant, and we were looking at the external things that you need to consider, those threatening cows, and then turning those into opportunities. So how can something that we're thinking is outside, but we're concerned about it, how can we turn that into an opportunity? And then looking at anything we consider a weakness, which is internal, anything that we think could be better, how can we strengthen that? So there's something happening here from a neuroscientific perspective. So this looks like a business analysis tool, but what it also does is move things from a negative experience, so from this fear-based experience, and turns it into what we can do with it. So this is like a treat and move your feet kind of idea, right? This is a move your feet activity for certain. So this is something that you can take in, whether in its totality or in pieces, and have conversations with your board or committees or in meetings where you can say, well, this sounds like you're having a concern about a consideration or a threat. So where's the opportunity in this? Or if there's something that is considered weak, well, then let's focus on what we can strengthen here. So I had sent out in the homework discussion, moving on to our organizational piece here, what is working well in my community's current organizational design and what needs to change. So I'm going to unshare so we can have those conversations just as a group here. Whether you realize it or not, you have an organizational design in your community, even if it's, Jeffrey, if it's cray-cray, you still have a cray-cray design. That's your design model. But you've got to design whether you think you have a design or not. So when you were thinking about what's working well, does anyone feel that they have something particularly working well inside their design that they're happy to keep and not touch? Go ahead, Laura, then Alan.
So they have a group of people that really love this center because they kept it running for 18 months without any leadership. And I don't know how to express that in an organizational design model, but there's something there. There's something that, and that's something I want to continue. I want to keep building on that because there is this deep love of this place and the love of each other that has kept them going. So that's something I don't want to see disappear.
Yeah, I'm hearing willingness in that too, right? Yeah. If you've been part of keeping a center open without a minister, there's definitely some people that step up with a willingness to do it, just what needs to get done. And that's beautiful. Okay, so you want to capture that. Don't want to lose that.
Right.
Great. Alan? Oh, you're muted. Go ahead.
The way the services are run, I think works really quite well. And not just the way they run, but also the rotating cast we have. Sometimes Trish is our Reverend's out of town, and we have speakers who come in, or sometimes she's in town and we have speakers who come in. Other ministers that are from other places nearby. One time when Ken Gordon was here for the CSL retreat that we had, that was like the regional retreat, he came and him and Deb spoke the next day at our center. And then we have a pretty good selection of musicians coming in as well. A regular set of folks that come in different times, and periodically we'll bring in somebody from the outside who's in the community, the broader community, has their own, musical practice. And I honestly don't have visibility into how that all is happening, but it works quite well, I will say.
Great. Anyone else like to share something they know is working already about the way that the organization occurs or the design of it? Okay. I'm going to flip over to the other side. I'm going to flip to what would you like to change? So if you're going to go through an organizational design exercise, I'm going to talk to you now about some examples of design concepts and then a way of looking at a design as a minister or a community leader. What might you want to fix or solve in that particular process of creating or updating or expanding or improving your organizational design? What needs to change?
Currently, some of our leadership council or core council board, whatever language you want to use, they have portfolios. So like there's a hospitality portfolio and there's a membership portfolio and that kind of stuff. And what I've noticed is that people get very attached to their portfolios and the way things are done, to the point of the detriment of those areas, because that's really not for leadership council to be in my purview. That's really not where the leadership council needs to be focusing their energy, is to try to decide, whether we're having lasagna this week or not is not something for the leadership council. So, and the way that they've been doing membership is you fill out a card. If any one of you were to come to our center this Sunday and fill out a card, you would be able to be a member on the first Sunday in December. So, so that kind of structure is not working well. So that's also coming to a screeching halt on Saturday, actually. So
okay. That's ending. Screeching halt. It's definitely ending. Okay. So for others, something that you definitely want to have changed, remedied, solved, sorted through a different org design. Cassandra, yeah.
Yes, something that's really interesting that came up in my mentoring call this morning that I want to just plant a seed in people's ears is that we were talking about having in-person community, but maybe not necessarily running off of a church model per se, or traditional church model. And we were talking about some communities that are known of that attract younger people, that are engaging with younger people, something that many CSL communities say that they want to do. And one of the things that my mentor was talking about was that in these communities where there are more engaged younger people, leadership actually looks much more egalitarian. It looks much different than having one person, overseeing everything. And it makes me even nervous just to even talk about it. But I think it's important to me as I step into the intention of reimagining spiritual community, that I also let go of what I think my role in that is as a spiritual director, as a senior minister, and maybe even finding new language for that role and redefining it in a way that engages more of the community. And yet at the same time, that's not like consensus driven where everything is stuck in trying to get everyone on board, because I know that doesn't work either. So I don't have any clear answers as to what that would look like, but I need to remember that as I reimagine things, I need to also reimagine my own role in that.
Interesting. Okay. Before we move on to the designs, does anyone else have something to call out that you'd like to try to remedy with an org design? Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing, and we'll just take a look at the next couple of slides, and then we'll have a chat. Okay. So I have put together descriptions of 3 organizational designs, and I'm happy to put these slides on a condensed slide set and flip them out to you, so don't need to worry too much about them. But for the purpose of spiritual communities, although there are a number of other organizational designs, these tend to be the designs that are default designs, and they can be adjusted to your community. So they are functional and matrix and a flatarchy, like a hierarchy but flat. And so your functional design is really set up by function or areas of specialty. That is likely what your design looks like now if you're in a community. And the positive in that is it's clearly defined, at least on paper. It has a look of being clearly defined, but what it does is it sets up silos of communication. So unless you really instill a way to communicate across or insist on meetings or methodology or a communication platform, there can be channels just doing their thing. The second is a matrix, and matrix has dual reporting lines, which can be great for a smaller group where people have more than one role, or they might be leading in one area and be a member of another area. And so the great thing about this is it gives you flexibility, but it can be confusing for decision making. And if people are in more than one area or have more than one manager, they may have allegiances, or they may spend more time at something that they like and less time at the thing that really needs them. So there can be confusion for decision making there. So the third is the flatarchy, which is wide versus tall, and it's a design that promotes egalitarianism, Cassandra, so there's that word, and consensus. It removes unnecessary levels of the hierarchy, but it can create that thing that you're saying you don't want, the long timeline for decision making. So you may want like a flatarchy that's adjusted. So these are not, they don't have to be absolutely finite and pure. You can take elements. One that I would mention is the dual leadership or the shared leadership today, or the team leadership, and that's going to show up, and that makes an opportunity within flatarchy that can occur. So let me show you a few designs here, and there's some 5 considerations, and I've got this twice. I have it at the end, so we'll consider these things and then step into the different designs and then look at, does my design factor in these things? And I'll send this to you as well. And so you can take this away and have conversations with your board or group or other decision makers. So the 5 considerations are that it supports a solution for that key issue or factor that you wanted to address at your center, way back from that list, that 1 to 10 scale list at the beginning, what you want to address. So hopefully your org design can make the thing that you don't want to have happen less likely to happen or less possible to happen. It also supports community values. So we did that value list. They were your values. And then I said supports the community values. So if you were looking at what your community says that they value, or your leadership team, to make sure that in your organizational design that it supports that and doesn't separate or make it divisive. Thirdly, that it supports the center's mission and vision. And then support successful completion of your strategic plan's goals. So you don't want to have a set of strategic plan goals that really can't be exercised in the design that's created. Lastly, this idea of doing good and doing well. So does it allow for leanness and effectiveness so that you can do good, and also that you can do things that you need to do nimbly, efficiently, professionally, at the cost that is desirable, and get you out into the community to do more of your doing well. So I have the 3 designs here, so we'll go through these and then I'm going to hop back into our group, but stop me at any time if you just want to unmute and just hop in here. So this functional design is a very typical design with the senior minister and an admin person, and then the channel. So pastoral, youth, programs, it's functional. So you look at the functions across the organization, and it is built for administration, functionally downward, to organize the things that get done. Not the people, but the things that get done, and the people are plugged into that. As a mindset, as a concept, that's the idea. When we look at the matrix organization, you can have people in multiple spots. So if you look at pastoral care, we've got Jenny as the lead on that, and there's Michael, but Michael is the lead on youth and family. Michael's also in the marketing team. So maybe Alan is in 3 places too. Maybe that's what it feels like, in this smaller community, right? And so this can be normal, but it can be confusing for decision making. So the senior minister is kind of also probably in every committee too. Okay, and this matrix organizational design can actually be quite effective. It just needs to be managed in a way that's very fluid and also really clear, that the lead is the lead, and probably regular meetings would happen with that, and the senior minister either wanting to fold out and be part of everything, or stay inward and focus on the work that's theirs to do with their administration person assisting them, and have these committees or groups report in on a team meeting where everyone is equal in the team meeting. So this does work. It can take a little bit of extra work, but I think from a millennial point of view too, it's really dynamic. So it allows people to be a leader and then not a leader. And so you're leading because you have responsibility. You're leading not because you're hierarchical. So it is definitely a mindset and a way that it can be managed. When we look at the flatarchy, easily decided among shared leadership. So if you've got the shared leadership, and that could be 2 or more people, and then you have each of the people who's in shared leadership responsible for a couple of areas, and in this way it's shared widely. There also, if you don't want leads, you can have committee, and they can come forward. And this removes the unnecessary levels of the hierarchy if people just have a reaction to the hierarchy. But it also needs to get into a rhythm, and you may want to shorten up the timeline for decisions, give key people decision-making authority, or centralize the decision-making authority. Okay, so before I'm just going to stop sharing for a second just so I can see everyone. Do you have any questions about those 3 most common organizational designs? Is there one there that looks like what you have already? Could you spot yourself? Stephanie, could you spot your group in there? Ish?
I suppose that, I mean, having seen all of the paperwork that we have, we're probably supposed to be functional.
Okay. So was that a play on words?
Well, kind of. Really, because it's all kind of very loose right now. Just because of we're very top down, very top heavy, unfortunately, and that's a problem with being very top heavy is if the very top of the pyramid gets fractured in some way, then it kind of rattles apart. I'll say, and we look kind of like a dysfunctional matrix.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And sometimes organizations go from a traditional functional environment, they get matrixed for a bit, and then that can work for a period of time when there's change. And then they find themselves either back in a functional environment, or they find themselves going into something a little flatter, where there's a couple of people who are overseeing, a wide number of committees or smaller groups. Okay. Okay. And so I'm going to go back to the share, and if you can grab your pen and paper, I have a couple of slides coming up that are going to be for your own reflection. And I have put some words in them, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to send them to you as blanks, so you can actually use them as a handout. So before I get too far in explaining it, let's go in. Okay. Okay. So I'd like you to grab your pen and paper, and you can make something that looks like this. And I'm going to give it to you later, but you did not get it as a handout because I want you to take it as a handout with your people. So I'd like you to look at your stakeholders, who your stakeholders are. So in the middle of your page, make a circle, and that's your center. Okay, it's the center of the page. It's also your actual physical or online center. And out from that, like a flower or like a spider, let's consider who your stakeholder groups are. So I've got you started there with a few of them. I've said that the youth in your environment are stakeholders, your local community, so outside of your center, the buildings and the community, the town, city that you live in. Your congregants are, of course, stakeholders, probably your primary stakeholders. Your vendors, so people that supply things to your organization, your center, would also be stakeholders. Okay, so go ahead and just brainstorm for a moment, whatever comes to mind, different stakeholders. I'll give you a moment with that. So knowing that your stakeholders are everyone who's impacted by the existence of your center, categorized into groups, these are your stakeholders. And each and every one of these stakeholder groups needs to be considered in the running of your center. Therefore, in building an organizational design that works for your center, there will need to be a way that each and every stakeholder is addressed in there. So somehow their needs are met. Okay, I'll give you another moment or two to allow the brainstorming to continue. Okay, who among us has done a stakeholder activity like this before with their center? Stephanie's looking at me like, Sonia, we do one every week. Okay. Maybe you can see that there could be value in doing a stakeholder exercise like this, even just calling it out with your decision makers, just to remember who we're serving, who our stakeholders are. Okay, so outside of some of the ones that I indicated here, who else do you have as stakeholder groups that wasn't listed there? Just go ahead and shout them out.
Community partners, renters, practitioners, musicians, and me.
Okay. I have had a minister ask if they could put themselves in the center of that. And well, they certainly can, although it does skew an organizational design. That can definitely be a way to do it. It's your personal stakeholders who you service. So you can take and look at, like, who do I need to consider in my work? And that's great for building a job description, by the way, which is next module, December 13th. So that you can use this exercise to look at anyone's job description too. This is really, really helpful. Let's go back to org design where we are. So anything else that has come forward? What are the other stakeholder groups that you're considering?
Volunteers.
Volunteers, okay. Lori,
Practitioners.
practitioners, okay. Cassandra?
Yeah. Any and all staff.
Okay. So paid staff group.
Yeah.
Okay. Laura, did you have one?
I was just going to say practitioners.
Practitioners, okay. Okay. How about Lesia?
I had a lot of those, and then also wrote down program leaders, the board of directors, and then whoever the head organization is. Like, I'm involved, Unity Canada or Unity Worldwide, and then CSL headquarters.
CSL can be a stakeholder, absolutely. Okay. Stephanie, did you have anything that hasn't been listed?
No, not really. I had something very specific to us, but I don't think in general.
Okay. Helen?
I put youth on there, but I put a question mark. I don't have youth right now, but I feel like that's something that we need to develop. So would that be considered a stakeholder, even though we don't have them?
Absolutely. And so think of this stakeholder listing as supporting your strategic objectives and supporting your organizational design and your job descriptions. So how that would play out is, if one of your strategic objectives is to grow your youth and family, then you're probably going to put some effort and emphasis and resources, activity around that, which is going to result in you including that in your design. So someone may have that portfolio underneath their responsibility now, and it might grow out to its own, and then you'll need a job role description. So you can see how that all gets connected. The whole 10 modules, I'm kind of taking you on a journey here, and it all wraps together. Alan, did you have one?
Well, I had a question. So when you talked about local community, does that include two different parts of it? One of them are potential congregants, and the other question is, there are groups of types of people from which we draw. Quite often, the people who come in who aren't regulars, and some of them become regulars, like myself. And that's largely due to the current mechanisms of outreach, either through Rev Trish and a number of meetups that we have. She's built and created around spirituality, as well as some organizations devoted to recovery. So I included those two types of groups of people as stakeholders, even though necessarily directly involved.
Yes. So you could have like meetup community if you view them as a stakeholder, if their needs are slightly different from your Facebook community, for instance, or from your recovery community. So those are all stakeholders. What would cause a group to be split into two of those circles is that their needs are slightly different or greatly different, but there's enough differentiation that they're not the just local community. So I put local community as sort of a generic piece, but like Jeffrey called out partners. And so some people might be in a retail setting, it might be other retailers, might be suppliers of product, might be providers of services that are in the healing or holistic or health modalities. So you might have like a healthcare community that is connected in a yoga community, whatever that is. But these are stakeholders and their needs need to be considered slightly different, which is why you give them their own pot. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So this can be a very empowering exercise when you look at it and you go, wow, we can impact all these people and we can draw on all of these groups to help us achieve our goals and grow our community. So there can be a sense of, you know, we're not in this alone and that we're part of something so much bigger. So this is a neat exercise to do at the beginning or as part of a meeting or a retreat, and just get people to really remember the impact that your center has. And so this can show up in your organizational design for considerations. I'm going to show you another version of this right now. So fresh sheet of paper. We can go back to this, whatever you're thinking, just put it on pause, set it aside. We're going to go back to, you can go back to that. Okay. So what if we take this view? So imagine that you are the congregant, who is in essence your customer, your client, and that is going to show up more deeply in the Seeing Congregant as Customer module coming in a few modules from now in the new year. And so this will, what we do right here, right now in these few minutes, we'll refer to again in the emphasis on a journey. So if we look at the congregant, what does the congregant have access to, or what is the congregant looking for? Embody the needs and wants and the access points of the congregant right now. So you can start with the things that are available. And I've started you out here. They have Sunday service. They have spiritual practice like meditation. Some people would even separate out meditation and other things. They might have a bookstore there. They've got education. They might have daycare. They might have, lasagna at Jeffrey's. So just think of all the things that they have access to because your center exists. The congregant view. I'll give you a moment with that. Now, when I do that exercise in a larger retreat setting with the board, I might do it as today what the congregant has, and then as a result of your strategic plan, the expanded view. So there might be the desirable, but right now we're doing what they have access to. Okay, and don't forget if there's online community. And some of this would be paid services, some of it would be free services, outreach services, pastoral care services, maybe you have ceremonies. I'm going to stop and give you a moment here. Okay. So how did that feel to do this from the congregants' perspective? Does your center feel expansive with lots available? Does it feel like there's a lot of room to grow and offer more things? Do you feel like you have too much that needs to kind of get organized? What was your experience imagining being the congregant there? Go ahead, Alan.
So I definitely, looking at it from that perspective and all the different circles that I drew off of that, some of which you had, some of which you said, some of which just occurred to me. It seems like we're a lot busier in a lot more avenues than it had occurred to me. One, and two, it does kind of drive some sort of notional organizational structure as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I thought.
Yeah, for sure. It can be very supportive it can almost make the design for you. And I'll comment on that in just a moment. But any other feedback around that experience? Yes, Stephanie?
I'm seeing a lot of things that aren't being taken advantage of. And that really kind of brings me up short. I'm asking why. You know, we offer a lot of things. And there's a lot of it that's sitting unused.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's some questions there. Probably you need to be with a group of people to really explore the answers to that, or it can motivate some of the changes. It's a perfect time to be doing this at the end of 2018, at the end of a year. It can really drive some of the decisions you make around how you spend your time and your money and your resources next year, if you're focusing on certain areas. Okay. Okay, any other comments around the experience there? Okay. So this might be something that you'd like to have a group do in your environment so that they can come onto the same page as you, because these two exercises are really, really simple, right? But they give you two different perspectives of your center. Most times people come up feeling like, wow, we got a lot more than what we realize in the congregant view. And in the determining stakeholders piece, there's a lot more to support and leverage. Okay, this will become more and more important as you get into the viewing congregant as client and the business outreach and networking pieces, growing your client community, your congregant community, when we get into those pieces in the new year. So how does this relate to organizational design? If you look at the congregant view, and you can see in your circle, you can see different services or items that are provided that you can group into categories. Maybe some of them fall into education, maybe some of them fall into programming, maybe some of them fall into outreach, maybe some of them fall into like online options. And so you can logically create an org design or items that need to be considered in an org design by categorizing them. Okay, I want to make sure everybody sees what I'm talking about. If you've got a number of things that are called spiritual practices in there, that's the category, then you might need someone who takes care of that. Or that might be a major item under someone's job description, or under a category if you put spiritual practice and pastoral care sometimes go together. Education and youth seem to go together in smaller or medium centers, for instance, just throwing out some ideas. And then looking at your stakeholder groups to determine and make sure that if there's anything else in there that needs to be accounted for, that it's covered in the design. So if you have, so for Jeffrey, I want to ask you, you were talking about the partners, the community partners. If you have managing the relationship with the community partners as something that needs to occur at your center, how do you bring that over and put it under your design? Where would it rest logically for you?
The majority of the community partners would be under outreach.
Okay. Okay, so the person responsible for outreach would do that. And lasagna. That was a joke.
Yeah, but it's
But it's
a
possible?
joke. But it's a joke. But at the same time, it's like where that needs to go. You know.
Did I get that? Okay.
Actually, we're switching to bagels, so there you go.
Well, and in the congregate view, you may have in there the fellowship piece that
Yeah, that's right there.
Big fan of caffeine ministry. Anybody who knows me. And so over in the determining the stakeholders, then those are, your suppliers come into place there, and your staff, as Cassandra was saying, if you've got a cafe, or the people that run the fellowship, so that committee, for instance. Okay, so I'm gonna round things out here, and just to remind us here of the 5 considerations for your org design. So remember that whatever design you decide to have, it needs to support that key issue or factor. That's a consideration. That whatever you said at the beginning of our time together in module 1 that you wanted to have solved, that the org design doesn't, it may not solve it entirely, but you don't want to widen that issue. That it supports the values, that it supports the mission and vision, that it supports successful completion of strategic plans goals. So we talked about that in terms of, with Reverend Laura, if she wants to expand the youth, with Alan, if you want to expand the online community or the outreach community, perhaps that gets articulated in a strategic goal, and it supports the center overall doing good and doing well. So remembering the why, we'll always go back to why does our center exist? Remember, we've had conversations around what makes my center relevant, and the organizational design should reflect that, which means that organizational design can be reviewed every 2, 3, 5 years in a slower moving situation. And it's not unusual to go from one design to the other, by the way, just depending on what you need. So as we finish up, I'm going to talk to you about homework, and then I'm going to flip back to our screen in case there's any final questions here. But our homework for module 4, which is building job and role descriptions, by the way, I would like you to continue this conversation with yourself, with others, with your notes and your reflections. Consider your organizational design and determine what you'd like to change or improve as it exists right now. And remember, if someone tries to tell you you don't have a design, you have a design. De facto, you have a design. Decisions are made somehow. So if Reverend Laura went back and did the forensics on her center and had somebody draw up the decision-making map of what had occurred, you'd be able to see that there was some sort of process, which meant that there was some sort of hierarchy or flat archy occurring as consensus or leadership decision was made without a leader. And I'd like you to, then moving into our next topic, select a role for which you'd like to create or update a job or role description. That might be your own, or might be someone that you think needs their role updated. It might be a role that doesn't exist and you would like to consider creating a job or role description. And so this can be a paid or unpaid role, by the way. I think volunteer roles need to have job descriptions as much as paid roles do. And just consider, just make a brief list of what you'd like to retain and change about this role. Okay, I'm going to unshare here. So I will send out an abbreviated version of the slides so that you have those designs in there. And I will put the reminder of the homework in an email as well. And I'd just like to open the floor here as we finish up for some comments on how you're feeling about this content around organizational design, how you're feeling, what you think you might like to do with it. Has anything inspired or confused you? Cassandra?
Yeah, I had a question about, can you help to clarify the difference between the matrix model and the flat archy model? They seem very, very similar. And it seems like in what you presented tonight that the difference is that one might be led by one senior minister, whereas another might be even led by maybe 2 co-ministers.
Okay. Yeah, I can resolve that for you. Either of the 3 models that I'm giving you can be one or more minister. Okay. The difference between the matrix organization and the others is in the matrix organization, people have multiple reporting structures. So if I was talking to corporate people, I'd say they have more than one boss. And they might be a leader in one area and an employee in the other. So in our spiritual environments, they might be leading youth and family, but they might be on the marketing committee. So there's multiple things going on, which happens in smaller environments or creative Google-ish type environments, which creates a lot of innovation and creativity and pollination and hybridization, and creates confusion if it's not managed in a way that the person leading it can handle that level of dynamic flow. Does that help you? That's the real key thing about matrix: more than one role, more than one boss. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? You don't look quite as full and confused as last time, so I hope you still think that you're getting your time's worth here. Yes, Alan?
So on the structural designs, when you first described them, before you laid out the charts, I had honestly thought that we were more like a flatarchy, but when you put the slide up, I thought the matrix definitely seemed to make more sense. But I think it's like you were saying, when you introduce those concepts, it could be a bit of this, a bit of that too. Mm-hmm. Those are organizational principles around which we accrete structures ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I've done some study of business structures and models too, as part of my non-spiritual work. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that was my thought on that.
Yeah, and what I can do for clarity is when I send these out to you, in the 3 graphs, I will put spiritual minister and in brackets S. So you can see that there could be more than one. I can tell you that the flatarchy lends itself more likely to multiple leaders. When there's multiple leaders, we go from this down to this, and the tendency is everything the one layer down sort of flattens and stretches out as well. So you might have, it could be super organized, like there could be 2 leaders. There might have been 6 areas of focus in the organizational design, so 6 areas of function, and the 2 co-leaders can say, I'll take these 3 and you take those 3, and so it just compresses it. You can feel that occurs, the flattening.
So the flatarchy is more kind of a functional, but is from what you just described, it sounds like the flatarchy is more of a hierarchy. But it's, well, there still sounds like there's some hierarchy, and that, so I'm just thinking, hi Karen, hi Leslie, that Leslie has, certain aspects that are under her at UVision, and Karen has other aspects that are under her, and they're co-leading, but, it's still somewhat hierarchical in that this group or this set of groups reports to Leslie, and this set of groups report to Karen. So is that kind of what you're describing as the flatarchy? Yeah.
There's still a functionality, but the distance between the people doing the function and the person they report into is really quite shortened, because if you've got one person, the space between. So if you've got 1 leader and 6 areas, then they probably aren't as involved down in those 6 areas because they have 6. But if you've got 3 and 3, then you're probably down in those areas with a level of accountability that wouldn't exist if you had 6.
Right, and you're kind of taking out the mid-level management kind of thing and more direct report to, okay. So.
Yeah, and that's what happened in corporate West, so corporate North America. That mid-level management disappeared over about a 15-year space with that flattening, and then added, when people were let go and restructured, the matrix, Freudian slip. The matrix came in, and there were lots more senior managers. Now the red pill and the blue pill. We're totally on a tangent now, but the matrix, the matrices began to occur. So more matrixed environments, because people had multiple managers, or they had a manager on an organizational structure and a different dotted line manager for a project. Okay. Any other comments, folks? Questions? Okay.
Perfect timing.
Okay, well, how about we end our time together? So I'll go ahead and pray us out briefly, and then actually, Jeffrey, can you stay on as well?
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful, terrific. Okay, so let's all just take a breath. Take a divine breath. Allow that breath to move through you. Allow that breath to be inhaled. Allow that breath to exhale, and exhale any tension that you're feeling from the concentration you've had with these new concepts here tonight, and these new ways of looking at old ideas. And so as we sit here collectively in the oneness of the divine, this experience of knowledge, this experience of knowing the source of all possibilities, knowing that each and every one of us here has taken from this experience and continues to move forward with the knowledge that they specifically needed, and that knowledge that is applicable to their specific organization also is resonating with them here tonight, and moves forward into further discussion with people and with leaders and decision makers that helps to grow and prosper and make efficient and make organized their individual centers, making the collective whole of these possibilities. So as we move into the next experience for each one of us today, just a blessing and a place of gratitude from which we extend out and allow all to be released. And together we say, and so it is. Beautiful.